We'll start with honorable mentions though, because I think that's a good starting spot. Now there's a lot of honorable mentions, so let me get this straight. Let's get on the same page here. This is my first year doing this YouTube channel, but for the last 4 years, I've been making my year-end album list the same exact way. So I guess I'll kind of break down the methodology, if you will. Throughout the full year, from the first of the year to the 31st of December, I am listening and sorting new music drops. Every week it's New Music Friday. Every Friday, and I'm catching all of those releases weekly, sorting all of those albums and singles that drop each week, and deciding if they should go into my 2024 playlist. My 2024 playlist is just a general catch-all playlist for music that I feel is meeting the moment. That's the idea there. And then at the beginning of December, or at least I started at the beginning of December this year, I go through that playlist and use it to help me decide like what were the albums that, not only had the most songs in the playlist, but obviously like the ones that are connecting with me the most. And then get a big list of all those albums, write them all down. I don't know how many albums it was. Probably 40 or 50. In years past, I kind of went through, scanned each album again, got a better feeling, and then just, whittle that down into my top 18. But this year I decided to go back and listen to each album, pretty much front to back, and like dive into each one, because I knew I was going to be doing this ranked list on the stream for the first time this year. And so it took me so long. It took me the entire month of December to go back and listen to each one of these albums. And I whittled it down to a top 18 with a bunch of honorable mentions. The top 18 is my 9 favorite hip-hop albums and my 9 favorite non-hip-hop albums. I'm a hip-hop head. This is a hip-hop channel, so, we're biased towards hip-hop, and we are upfront about that. So half the list is comprised of hip-hop. The other half of the list is comprised of, like, all other genres, because it really works out for me and my taste. For the first time ever, I ranked these albums. Not the honorable mentions, but the albums. Top 18. I ranked them. Least favorite to favorite, but I love them all. So with that being said, here's the honorable mentions all at once. Let me see if I can get this. Honorable mentions, kind of difficult to say. I'll be posting this on Instagram too, so you can reference it. Asher Roth and Heather Gray and their album Temporary Heaven. Big Sean with his album Better Me Than You. Bleachers with his album Bleachers Deluxe. Common and Pete Rock with their album The Auditorium Volume 1. Doechii with her album Alligator Bites Never Heal. Jesse with his new album Wanted. Joey Valence and Bray, No Hands Deluxe Edition. Fantastic album. Kid Cudi, Insano. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with their album Flight B741. Makami with Rich Ass Haitian. Matt Champion from Brockhampton with Mika's Laundry. Nia Archives, Silence is Loud, No Worries, Why Laud, Porches, Shirt, Robert Glasper with his album Code Derivation, and then last but not least, certainly not least, Schoolboy Q with Blue Lips. That's our honorable mentions, and now we get into the PowerPoint. I spent a lot of time making this list. I loved a lot of the music that came out this year. I am very, very happy with the drops that we got from the artists that we did. Oh yeah, another way about like how I construct this list, my theory behind it. So I pick 9 hip-hop albums and then 9 non-hip-hop albums, and then the honorable mentions list, all of those tie for like the 10th spot of each of those. So the honorable mentions, they're all like tied in my mind, I guess, for like spots 19 and 20. Top 18 albums of the year, okay? Alright, number 18, Yeat with his album 2093. This is futuristic rage of the year 2024. This is like where it's at. Forget Playboy Cardi. Forget fucking Destroy Lonely or whatever the whole opium. Nah. Yeat is doing it way more interesting than any of those guys, at least in 2024. Huge shout out. Before last year at this point, I was like lukewarm on Yeat. He was just another dude, really. This album changed things for me in the way that I see him and the type of artist he is. If you like Travis Scott, if you like Utopia, this is a great like pairing with Utopia, in my opinion. You may hate it. There is a reason it's number 18. It's kind of a guilty pleasure in a way, but I rock with this. It's a long album, so there are dips, there are valleys, there are valleys and lows and highs. Okay, but overall, it's fantastic. If you ask me, in my opinion, I recommend you give it a shot. He's onto something. Okay, I promise you, he's definitely onto something. Now, I will say the album, he did drop another one. He dropped 2 this year in 2024. The second one that came later in the year, not as good. So I'm not holding my breath for like a very well, particularly crafted and thought out entire discography from Yeat, although maybe it will happen. But this is the one from Yeat up until this point. Next, we've got number 17, Lupe Fiasco, with his short little condensed compact album Samurai, a concept album, really like one of the most esoteric concepts, because his album fucking Drogas Waves exists. Two of the most esoteric hip-hop concept albums of all time almost have come from Lupe. Now I'm sure you can make an argument for all sorts of different people, but the two that come to my mind, like, so this one is obviously Lupe is like a samurai with, you know, his lyrics and his flows, and then he's also like a trained martial artist and shit, so like that's pretty much on the surface. But in an interview, Lupe said this album is a parallel to a Amy Winehouse documentary that he watched, in which like she's on stage in her early days of her career in London and like getting, I don't even know, like booed off maybe, but then she's like an incredible talent and he likens himself to her, and it's very odd because when you listen to it, he doesn't talk about Amy Winehouse. The album has nothing to do with Amy Winehouse, but I guess like it does. But all that aside, this is a great rebound recovery from Lupe as a follow-up to his album 2022's, now the name of his album from 2022 is escaping me, but regardless, that one was a little messy. It was a little odd for Lupe, in my opinion, felt a little off, like something was missing, or maybe he was trying new things. But this is Lupe like going back. It seemed like he took a step back, reassessed what was working in his more recent albums, and in my opinion, this one's more in the spirit of Tetsuo and Youth, which is my favorite Lupe album, and so this is like a more condensed, compact version of Tetsuo and Youth, but you know, another healthy heaping of that style. And he cut the fat on it. I can tell he spent his time crafting it, and that's what Lupe does. He's an artist. He's like the truest of artists in this hip hop thing, of people who are still in their prime. Yeah, man, I'm just like super happy with Lupe in this kind of like return to form. It was a very quick misstep with that last one, although I do kind of like it. I still can't remember the name of it, but his 22 album, it was a little odd. He's back. Lupe's back. And I also just saw that he's teaching at Harvard and MIT. Like, he's teaching hip hop curriculum at like prestigious universities. Like, he is fucking killing it. He's so cool. Lupe Fiasco, he fucking kills it. Everything he does. Alright, next. Number 16. Top 18 albums of 2024 ranked. Number 16, Jack White with his album No Name. With this weird ass cover. This blank ass album. Weird ass cover, no name, untitled album. This shit rips. Jack White is fucking ripping like it's 2002 and he's playing with the White Stripes. This shit is the best Jack White solo album, and he has some, in recent years, some better ones. Talk about a return to form. If you haven't checked it out, I don't know if you're a fan of the White Stripes, you gotta check it out, because this is just like, it sounds like a new White Stripes album. Fresh. Sounds fresh. He sounds hungry, but really, Jack White, he is a creative force. Even when his albums aren't the best, he's always creating. He's always like at the forefront of whatever the fuck he's doing. He's just one of those guys that is, he's just too cool. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I can still do this. So it's cool to get that from him. He's been trying to do like crazy, like more like almost hip hop influenced rock, which has been cool. Hasn't aged too well. But this one is gonna age like fine wine. I guarantee it. So check it out if you haven't. Moving on to number 15 on our list. Kamasi Washington, jazz artist, with his album Fearless Movement. Now, this is like the one strictly jazz placement on this list. There's another album coming later down the line that's like contemporary jazz, but this is like, I mean, it's called Fearless Movement, which is kind of like what the spirit of jazz and hip hop is, and this is like straight jazz. Like, these are like 7-minute long saxophone instrumental freeform jazz type of shit, but mixed in with some features, you know, more contemporary features that you'll recognize. But it's an incredible body of work. You gotta, I mean, if you like soul and jazz, you'll love this. But yeah, this guy's on To Pimp a Butterfly. I'm sure you're aware of Kamasi Washington, but if you're not, he's instrumental in the LA jazz scene. He was instrumental in the creation of To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. He's in a group called Dinner Party with Terrace Martin and Ninth Wonder and Robert Glasper. They do a lot of work featuring work with Felix as well from the Midwest scene. But that's like the backbone of LA jazz. But yeah, Kamasi Washington, instrumental in the creation of To Pimp a Butterfly, and released his first album in 9 years, and it's fantastic. It really is. So check it out. Moving on. Number 14, Vampire Weekend's new album, Only God Was Above Us. If you were to ask me if I believe Vampire Weekend would be on my year-end list in 2024, if you were to ask me that at the beginning, I'd be like, fuck no, you're joking. But here we are, and here they are on my list. And I've listened to their albums for the first time, like somewhat recently, like within the last 5 years. And I was like, okay, these are okay. I recognize some of the songs. This is their best album, at least the best one that I've heard. But like by far, like this is a hella fun album. Like such a fun album. Super catchy shit. Yeah, it just catches your ear. Lots of ear candy going on here. The guitar, the tone of the guitar is just like ringing in my head right now. Even though this is a hip hop channel, like this is just good music. But yeah, never been huge into Vampire Weekend. Wasn't thinking about them at the beginning of this year. It's just one of those ones that just like, boom, whoa. Wasn't expecting that. This is right up my alley. Vampire Weekend, Only God Was Above Us. Okay, should we move on? Number 13? Let's do it. Magdalena Bay with Imaginal Disc. This is poppy, electronic-y, indie, if I had to broadly describe it. I don't know if anybody that's watching right now is into this type of music, but we do have more music kind of like this on this list. But this shit is another really fun album filled with ear candy, very unconventional, not formulaic, boring pop music. Like this shit is like gorgeous, beautiful, lush, also fun and catchy and boppy, and also kind of dark in certain spots. I mean, it's just a great listen. It's just a great listen. 13th best listen of the year as far as albums go, full projects. I went back, like I said, I went back and listened to at least 40, probably more, honestly, albums, but like all of the albums. Like I wanted to like feel each album and like really like feel which ones are the best here. And it took me so long. And you know, I listened to these albums throughout the year, but there's so much music that comes out nowadays, and it's like I'm keeping up with hordes of new albums and singles every Friday while going to school and taking care of a daughter. So like it's a lot. So I don't have as much time as I used to really live with certain albums. I do live with my favorite albums, but you know, my most favorite ones are highest at the top. But like these ones kind of back here, I haven't listened to them as much as I would like to at this point, and I will. That's why they made this list. So I know, you know, now they're in a lot of my playlists, and we've got all these like albums of the decade playlists and shit. So these ones they're in my top 18, they're getting even more rotation these days because they're the best. They are just the best. Moving on. Number 12, Justice with their album Hyperdrama. This is kind of like the electronic placement on the list. Super solid. They had a song, Dance, D-A-N-C-E. D-A-N-C-E. That one, if you know what I'm talking, if you know, you know. And that was way back in the day, like when I was in middle school or you know, it probably came out even earlier than that. But I used to play this game, DJ Hero, made by the Guitar Hero people. Yeah, like a turntable. That song was on it, and the memories of playing that game are just seared to my mind. I always loved that song. So when this album was coming out, I'm psyched. Loved the singles. It's a very, very solid electronic album. Like hardly any skips. No skips, really. I mean, it's just like solid front to back. Not much more to say about it. Just go listen to it. I mean, it's electronic dance music. Pop. There's a Miguel feature on there. I think they're French as well. It's just one of those French dance duos like Daft Punk. Thundercat is on this thing. Conan Moccasin, The Flints, Tame Impala. Tame Impala's on here twice actually, and Miguel. So yeah, go check out Hyperdrama. It's a great one. Number 11 is where we're at in this list of my top 18 favorite albums of 2024. Mike Schaub with his album Suicide 3. This is a rapper I don't know too much about, but I guess I kind of found him last year. He had a collab. Yeah, Mike Schaub and Nicholas Craven released their EP Shadow Moses last year, and that was as in 2023. That's what put me onto him. And then he dropped the Suicide 3 project, and it, like the creativity on this thing blew me away. It still does. The just genuine and unique flow, and then the tone of his voice is very relaxed and laid back. There's an effortlessness about his rapping and a coolness about his style. And then he can also kind of sing. He has these songs with ear catchy melodies that he just kind of like hums up, and so they're kind of like understated or low key, but hella catchy songs all over this thing, pretty much front to back. The music doesn't get too weird, but it's different. It's different, but it's kind of refreshing in that way. It's very cool. kind of just leave it at that. It's very cool. I mean, there's something special about this guy. He made it this high up on my list. Yeah, that's Mike Schaub. Suicide 3. Here we are, folks. Top 10 albums of 2024. Official QDR, Quarter Day Recordings. This is canon, y'all. This is canon. I got these nice graphics made up of these of this list in my honorable mentions list that I'll be posting on the Instagram account at Quarter Day Recordings. If you don't follow it, you should. On Instagram at Quarter Day Recordings. Also on Threads at Quarter Day Recordings. Also, while we're here, if you wouldn't mind giving this video a thumbs up to let the algorithm know that you're interested in this type of content, and then also, obviously help my video, but it helps you too. I watch a lot of YouTube, and I make sure the videos that I'm vibing with, I always give them a thumbs up because, it just helps my For You page. And then I also want to support the creator. You know what I mean? So it's so simple, so free. Number 10 spot. Let's get into it. Willow. Her album, Empathogen. This album probably wins the Take Me By Surprise Award of the year. Now, I've fucked with Willow's music in the past, but mainly when I was younger, 2015, literally 10 years ago. She was dropping some kind of cool, trippy things, and I was into it at the time, but always hit or miss. But this is holy shit, she's a neo-soul icon, or growing in to be one, and maybe not everybody would agree with that at this point, but this album is creatively kind of on another planet with her contemporaries. I'm talking SZA, I'm talking Ari Lennox, I'm talking Doja Cat, I don't know, Summer Walker. She's on a higher creative play than those people. If this album is any indication of her future. Maybe this flew under your radar, and actually, I just found out today while I was making this, there's a deluxe version of this album that I missed in the year that it came out, which is super frustrating because it has a feature on one of the bonus songs, on one of the new songs, by Kamasi Washington, which is an artist that I just talked about earlier in this list. So I haven't even listened to him yet. So there's even a deluxe version of this album, but the regular version is fantastic. I think it's only 10 songs. If you like neo soul, if you like Erykah Badu, if you like Lauryn Hill, she is cut from that cloth. She is certified. Yes, this is Willow Smith, as I'm sure you know. Whip my hair back and forth. Willow Smith, Will Smith's daughter, making music leagues and leagues and leagues and miles and stratospheres ahead of the music that her dad makes, and frankly even her brother. Okay, number 9 spot, drum roll please, Elucid with his album Revelator. Elucid is an underground rapper, one half of the group Armand Hammer with Billy Woods, so I'm pretty sure they're both from New York. But yes, Elucid. This might be the most difficult listen on this entire list of mine, but I love this shit. This is straight heroin to my veins. It's super glitchy. It's not conventional at all, really. It's kind of really noisy a lot of the time, but Elucid, his rapping is just so potent. His writing is just so potent. There's a poetry and a deep spirituality about, and just really just mind-bending imagery, and the places that him and Billy Woods' minds go blow me away nearly every time. And I've been waiting for an album that really blows me away from Elucid, and this is kind of reaching that. I still have faith that he'll drop even better, but look at this, placing at number 9. I'm really connecting with this one. Maybe it's not everybody's cup of tea. I'm sure it's not, because like I said, it's pretty noisy. If you like Scaring the Hoes by JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown, it's kind of up that same alley. If you like Injury Reserves, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, it's kind of up that alley. Although that album's even weirder than this one, even harder to listen to. But when I say hard to listen to, I don't mean that as bad at all. It's just very noisy, and some people can't sit through that. I, depending on the album, like that shit. But yes, Elucid with his album Revelator. Okay, number 8. Let's blow through the rest of these. Ab-Soul's Soul Burger. It was Los Angeles took over this year. Not that they didn't already have a grip on the industry prior to 2024, but particularly this year, between all of the TDE stuff, between all of the Kendrick stuff, felt like a really unified West Coast on the hip-hop scene. And Ab-Soul was a part of that with this album, Soul Burger. I think this album is way better than his last one, Herbert. Way more interesting songs. I love the sample choices. I love the beat selection on this. A lot of classic sample choices on here that are nostalgic to me personally from 10 years ago. Introducing classic samples to a new generation really of hip hop fans, and also, Ab-Soul has his old fans, but every song in this thing is fucking incredible. Ab-Soul is at the top of his pen game. Ab-Soul honestly suffers from emotion on his albums a lot of the time, and I can't necessarily blame him because he seems to have gone through a lot of loss, and he's an emotional guy, but his albums kind of suffer sometimes because of that. Not this one though. This one's tight, and this one's solid, and this one's dope as fuck. and the features on it are incredible. And the song, I just want to give a special shout out to the song Crazier featuring JID, because that is like one of the coolest hip hop songs of the decade for sure, and it lives on this album. So shout out Ab-Soul with Soul Burger, coming through with incredibly solid hip hop, West Coast hip hop. And with that being said, we continue on to our number 7 spot with Kendrick Lamar, slightly edging out Ab-Soul, but hand in hand, two brothers in arms, Kendrick and Ab-Soul, standing together on this album, or on this list side by side. Kendrick, I mean, what more is there to say about this one? Everybody has listened to it, probably a whole bunch at this point, at least certain songs, a whole bunch. Can't really escape it, all over the internet. People are using these songs everywhere. Just the cap on like one of the most interesting and hilarious and mysterious and like weird beefs in hip hop ever, and probably will be remembered for many decades to come. Kendrick Lamar, GNX, number 7 of my list of the top albums of 2024. And the thing with this album is they said that you can't just hop in the car and throw on a Kendrick album. And this is Kendrick saying, yes, you fucking can. And that's what it is. I mean, it's called GNX. He's leaning against the car. Every song is a bop and a banger. Every song is fun as hell, or just like super nice to, I mean, have you listened to it in the car? This album is perfect for the car. It's a car album. This is a response and a cap on the beef. And that's kind of why it edges out Ab-Soul here. But like I said, they're standing side by side, brothers in arms here. All right, number 6, LL Cool J The Force. What the hell? This thing is produced by Q-Tip. If you like A Tribe Called Quest, if you like Thank You For Your Service, We Got It From Here, their last album, this thing is like a spiritual successor to that, in my opinion. It's a Q-Tip album. LL Cool J, I'm not gonna lie, was kind of introduced me on this album. Obviously, I know who LL Cool J is. Obviously, I have some of his albums in my library, but never been crazy about him. He's never been like one of my goats or anything like that. I've always just kind of seen him as more like a commercial dude, more of like a Drake kind of guy. But he is rapping on this album, and he sounds young and fresh and hungry as a rapper on this album. And the Q-Tip production is so interesting. It's so just like unconventional, and like I said, it's spiritually has the same energy as We've Got It From Here, Thank You For Your Service, the last Tribe album that came out in 2016. Highly recommend. I actually have videos talking about this album. I have one of my somewhat more popular videos from this year is based on LL Cool J, because he was on the song with Brad Paisley called Accidentally Racist like 10 years ago. I'm talking about LL again in like a more positive fashion this time. So shout out LL Cool J. He's given me plenty of content this year, and he also made the goddamn album of the year list. Let's actually just give a little round of applause for LL Cool J. Okay, moving on. Number 5, top 5. Big deal. Gather in, everybody, gather in. Charlie XCX, Brat, and it's completely different, but also still Brat. Specifically, this version. She dropped 3 versions of this album this year. The original, and then she dropped one with 3 bonus songs. I can't even remember what it's called, but this one is called Brat, and it's completely different, but also still Brat, because she tacked on an entire album's worth of incredible, top-notch electronic and hip-hop remixes of the original Brat album. So, the original Brat album came out, and I was like pretty lukewarm on it at first, but once this remix album dropped, my eyes were kind of opened, because these remixes, in my opinion, improve every song. But then they also gave me the appreciation for the originals. So now I love the remixes, and then I also now love the original album. It's kind of another one of my guilty pleasures at this point. My wife also loves this album. I got it for her for Christmas. But yeah, the remixes, they've got like Drain Gang on them. They've got Bon Iver. One of the songs has Bon Iver on them. It's got Caroline Polachek, Lord on the remixes, Billie Eilish on the remixes, and they like beefed up each song. They remixed them all, and like the mixes sound better. The songs sound more interesting. The production is more conventional, I guess, which I appreciate that, because the original it took time for it to grow on me. Okay, so yeah, the remix version of Brat, and it's completely different, but also still Brat. You gotta check it out. I'm sure you've seen this album everywhere at this point. Specifically gotta shout out that Bon Iver feature. That shit's crazy good. All right, number 4. Here we go. Brittany Howard, what now? So Brittany Howard is the lead singer, the lead vocalist of Alabama Shakes, which in 2015, a decade ago, they released one of my favorite albums ever, Sound and Color, which I'm sure everybody knows at this point. Very popular album. But she's been making solo music since like 2019, solo albums. And I mentioned ear candy on some of these albums, on maybe a lot of them. And this is another example of ear candy. A lot of soul, very soulful. If you know Sound and Color, if you know Alabama Shakes, you know Brittany Howard. It's in the same vein. It's just as good as Alabama Shake's albums. I've been rocking with some of these songs for a long time, it seems like now, because she had singles for this album coming out in 2023 as well, and this came out early 2024. You know, it's so good. It's kind of a sleeper, because I don't always think about it. This one, I would love to get this one on vinyl. I would love to get this on vinyl. So, moving on. Top three albums of 2024. Number 3 spot goes to JPEG Mafia with his album, I Lay Down My Life For You. Now, when I was talking about Elucid, saying this is like probably the most difficult album to listen to on this list, the next one in my mind was this. Although this one is pretty digestible as far as JPEG Mafia albums go. This is incredible body of work from JPEG Mafia, especially coming off a very high 2023, Scaring the Hose, his collab with Danny Brown. I think this is better than Scaring the Hose. Scaring the Hose is actually like really noisy to the point where I don't blame people for not liking it. But this is another example of like, I love the sample selection on this. He's choosing samples that are nostalgic to me from songs that I loved like in high school, that were new in high school, like 10 years ago. And so he's doing this thing where he's introducing classic samples to a new generation. What was the other album on this list that I said was doing that? Oh, Ab-Soul. Yeah, kind of like Ab-Soul, Soulburger album. Both of these albums, Soulburger and I Lay Down My Life For You, they're choosing samples that I already love and repurposing them into new incredible songs. Like, I just love that shit. And that's kind of the essence of some of the backbones of hip-hop, or some of the foundation bones of hip-hop, is just recycling and repurposing. Hip-hop feeds itself as far as like sampling and then like flows and styles. They recycle and people can borrow within hip-hop. And this is true for all art styles, but I particularly love the sampling aspect of hip-hop and recycling in that way. And reusing samples like this, like JPEG Mafia, just to bring in old and new fans alike. It just helps create the sense of a community of art, a community of artists and creators, and it's just a beautiful thing. Hip-hop is a beautiful thing. All right, number two spot, drum roll please, goes to none other than Fouché with her album, Pointy Heights. Now, it's kind of like indie pop with like an island twist, but it's very bubbly, it's very light, but it's very catchy. Again, the earworms, the ear candy all over this thing, and that's why it's reaching my number 2 spot. It's a feeling that I have with this album. I love these songs. Maybe this isn't what you're here for. This style of music isn't what you're here for, but this is what I am connecting with, at least in my number 2 spot. I love every single one of these songs, and her voice, like this one caught me by surprise. I didn't love her last album. Didn't really know who she was as an artist when I added this album to my library. But now I do. I feel like I listen to this album and I'm like, oh, that's Fouché. Like now she has an identity. And so it's kind of like, it seems special. Like maybe she found herself. I still haven't done this, but I need to go back and re-listen to her other album from this decade. But I don't think it's nearly as good as this. Like these songs are legit as fuck. They're like lullabies almost. One, they kind of sound like lullabies. And two, they're like classic, like lullabies. Like the melodies, I don't know where she's pulling from exactly, but like I said, like kind of got like an island twist, an island flair to it, like a beachy kind of vibe on a lot of these songs with bubbly, light pop vocals, but it's really just the catchiness. You gotta check this shit out. Maybe y'all won't agree with me, but I love this shit. I love these songs so much. So much so, it's at my number 2 spot. I'm not joking, y'all. It's a serious placement right here. Number 2. Very serious placement. I mean this shit. Like I said, I went back and listened to all these albums, especially these top 18. I listened to these top 18 again. You know, I listened to a whole list, a whole bunch of them to whittle it down to the top 18 with some honorable mentions. And then I listened to the top 18 again in order to rank them. So I mean these placements. I do. I truly do. Put a lot of thought into this list. And with that being said, at the very end here, we have our number 1 spot. And after this, I will be getting off the stream so I can eat dinner and hang out with my family like a good boy. And thank you all for writing. Alright, so without further ado, my favorite album of the year, of 2024, Tyler the Creator, with his album Chroma fucking Copia. It's so good, I added the fucking. If you haven't listened to this shit, you got to. It is, in my opinion, and I have loved Tyler for 10 years, his entire career. I've known about Tyler. I caught on to him, what I think is pretty fucking early on. If it wasn't the tail end of 2009, it was the first quarter of 2010 when my friend sent me the Yonkers video. Or it was I think the Earl sweatshirt video. The video for Earl where they're like got fake blood and everything. I am a day one Tyler guy, you know. I think this is his best album. Personally, I'm connecting with this album so hard. It's hard for me to put it into words because it's just a feeling. I love this album. It is so, the song ideas on it are so fleshed out, and that's the thing with Tyler. He's such a true artist because he's been trying to make certain song ideas happen for years, and he'll try and try again at a certain sound, and he's got these songs laid out for us on the history of his discography. He literally, legitimately gets better with each album because he is continually perfecting these particular sounds. And come to Chromacopia, I mean, maybe he can and maybe he will get better than this. I do think that there is room for Tyler to get better. So I don't know if this is like the perfect Tyler album quite yet, but this is most certainly his best album yet, in my opinion. It's nearly perfect. I'm talking 9.999999999 out of 10. I legitimately think Tyler will make a 10 out of 10 album before his career is over, and that will be incredible. That might shatter my fucking brain because this album is already like so goddamn good. And I love Tyler as an artist, and I love hip hop as an art form. How about that for a transition?